All right. Hi, everybody. I hope you can see and hear us. My name is Christian Parker. I'm the chair of the theater program here at Columbia University School of the Arts and the head of the dramaturgy concentration. And I am with two of my current students, our current students, and I will let them introduce themselves.
My name is Anna Woodruff, and I'm a second-year dramaturg in the program. And
I'm Ned Moore, and I'm also a second-year dramaturg.
We're so glad that you're able to join us. There may be people who join along the way. Please let us know if you're having any trouble hearing or if there's any technical issues, because we did this one other time a few weeks ago and ran into some trouble with that. So I think we're good to go, but let us know if there's anything. No problems like before. Very good. So happy to hear that. I will go through this presentation, and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions. I may move somewhat swiftly through these slides in the PowerPoint to leave as much time for questions as possible. So to hang on to those for now, or if you want to type them in, you can whenever you have them, and then I'll look at them at the end. Okay. So welcome. This is a little snapshot of the dramaturgy program here at Columbia, which I think has evolved a lot over the years. One of the things that I often say about what I do, at least in terms of my kind of disposition as a teacher and as a leader of this program, is that I've kind of tried to turn it into the program that I thought it might be when I first studied dramaturgy back in the 90s here. I came into the dramaturgy program having experience in other disciplines and interested in and sort of discovered it as I was applying to graduate schools and other disciplines, and thought, wow, okay, that sounds like an intersection of a lot of my interests. And it sounds like perfect training for artistic leadership. And so I think that is really one of the hallmarks of our own program now, that I've been running it for several years, is to focus our conversation around dramaturgy and plays and play structures around how the analytical and creative tools that you're developing can put you in a position to really be an artistic leader in the field as it evolves. So getting a little bit more specific, what is dramaturgy? Lots of people will give you different answers about what dramaturgy is or what a dramaturg is. One of the things that I think we really embrace here is both a broad definition of the term, but a shared understanding that it's a term that reflects process, and it reflects the making of the thing more than it reflects a pathway to a very specific job, which is sort of how it has traditionally been taught in a lot of other programs. Here, we're really trying to define the skill set broadly and imagine our students as entrepreneurial and engaged in a process of figuring out exactly where they want to apply these skills later in the theater world or in other media even. So we talk about dramaturgy as the making of theatrical events. That could be about play analysis and how plays get built and written, but it's also about how an entire event gets made and how a team gets built. It's a way of seeing, witnessing, and shaping the collaborative process. I see our students as leaders in the process, not necessarily just responders. They are people who are going to have ideas, they're going to have creative insights, and they're going to be really adept at helping to build teams and help teams work well together. Collaborative skills, diplomatic skills, communicative skills are all things that we talk about a lot, and how to move a process forward. It is a skill set and a set of insights that sits at the intersection of all the other theatrical disciplines. One of the things that I think is really important about studying dramaturgy and knowledge of dramaturgy is that you end up conversant in how all of the other disciplines work and what their own vocabularies for working on a new play or project might be. And so our curriculum, as you'll see a little bit later, really reflects our commitment to making sure that our students have the broadest range of kind of vocabularies around process. As I said, it's not a job per se. Knowledge of dramaturgy is expressed in many, many jobs and roles within the theater. The best directors, the best designers, the best actors, certainly the best playwrights, and the best producers are all usually quite adept at dramaturgical analysis and the collaborative techniques that are sort of implicit in dramaturgical training. What we do is give students specific depth and breadth in dramaturgical training so that as they're launching their careers out in the world, they're really able to parlay those skills into any number of different jobs, which may or may not actually even end up being in the theater, but in a culture in which storytelling is ever more important and ever present, ever more varied, and where the truth is often somewhat subjective. I think knowledge of storytelling is really, really important. You can ignore that phone in the background. We're dealing with that right now. Dramaturgy in practice I see as generative, not just responsive, as I said. It is a field of study here at Columbia where we encourage our students to be people of ideas who are going to be ready to act on those ideas and not just wait for other people to generate work that they respond to. It requires ambition, diplomacy, insight, and leadership, all of which are things that we talk about alongside the more sort of concrete work that we do in the program along in generating new work and in talking about literature and history and theory. We talk about all these things, all these sort of slightly more, in some ways, emotional or psychological concepts. Why Columbia? Well, I think we do differ from a lot of other programs in that our emphasis really is a pre-professional one, and it is centered around certain values that we have about collaboration. If there's one direction that the program is moving as a whole, which is inclusive of 6 different disciplines that we teach in: acting, directing, playwriting, dramaturgy, stage management, and theater management and producing, and playwriting. I see it moving towards greater and greater intersection of the disciplines. Each of those disciplines were kind of added to this program at different moments in its history. And so it's been, my process as a chair has really been to try to guide us towards greater synthesis in the program, because it's what our students need, it's what our students want, it's what we actually espouse, and it's where the field is going. Being able to be a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary artist, I think, is really important, and to develop an orientation towards collaborative work, I think, is really key. So that's really sort of a core value of the program. As I said in the introduction and in the last slide, we define the professional applications of studying dramaturgy very broadly. We certainly would never discourage anybody from pursuing some of the traditional jobs associated with dramaturgical study, like literary management or production dramaturgy, but we're not limiting our conversation around the professional aspirations of our students to those roles. Many of our alumni have worked in film and television development. Some are producers, some have become artistic directors, some have founded their own theater companies, some are working in leadership roles outside of the literary management sort of track within organizations, many associate artistic directors, some are resident dramaturgs, some are working in dance companies. Our alumni are really working in all aspects of artistic leadership. So that's sort of one of the hallmarks of the way we talk about the profession. We have world-class faculty within a major research university, which is something that can't really be underestimated, I think, in terms of what Columbia can offer. Because we're in New York City is as it's on the next line, it says more than a backdrop, it's our largest classroom, and that goes hand in hand with the faculty. Because we're here, we're able to attract some of the best people, many of the best people in all disciplines. It's convenient for them, but also it enables them to really deeply invest in the program. We did an open house here on Saturday for people who are local and could come check out the program. And one of the things that I said with great confidence was that the fact of the matter is that while our faculty across disciplines is sort of fancy, one of the things that I respect most about them is that they are deeply, deeply engaged with the students, full-timers and adjunct faculty alike. And it's a real benefit of the program here. These are people who are working at the top of the field when they're not in the classroom, and they're able to really bring that experience, an immediate experience, into the room. We offer a unique balance of practical experience and academic rigor. And by that, I really mean that, as I said, our emphasis is on the profession and making sure that our students can launch themselves into not only successful and artistically satisfying, but hopefully also sustainable and financially sustainable careers. There is a core curriculum for dramaturgs, which is inclusive of courses which address critical thinking and academic writing and theater history and theory and some literature, all of which is really important, and I would never de-emphasize that. But actually, the thrust of the program is really about making work and the collaborative experience with their cohort of other students in other disciplines. One of the advantages of New York City, as a backdrop, of course, is that our students get to see work all the time. We get free tickets almost every day of the week to Broadway, off-Broadway, and off-Broadway shows, which complement the coursework, but also just allow our students to be steeped in the theatrical life of New York City. Alongside that, we have a required internship program, actually, but as it says here, we have unparalleled professional development opportunities through the Schubert internships, theater partnerships, international connections and exchanges, and career guidance. In order to graduate, our dramaturgy students have to complete 2 professional internships, which are funded in part by a stipend through the Schubert Foundation, which has a long-standing relationship with our program. And those internships are certainly viewed as something that is core to the curriculum. They're not just sort of boxes to tick that you did them and then you can graduate. They are, in our minds, a real launching pad into the profession. And so I and my colleagues work closely with the students as they're considering where they might like to work, for whom they might like to work, whether they want to work in a not-for-profit institution, in the commercial sphere, apprentice to an artist, travel internationally and do work there. What would best serve them in terms of both their learning curve and what gaps they have in their own knowledge, but also who might they meet in those internships that could help them along the way, whether it's actually something that might turn into a job, or whether it's getting a reference, or whether it's building a relationship with an organization over time. We also have burgeoning relationships and existing relationships with lots of not-for-profit theaters in the city because we've sent so many interns to those organizations. We have a brand new partnership with the Roundabout Theater Company, which is a new program that we launched last year, which serves our students in many different ways, through a play reading series, through year-long apprenticeships, which are paid, and through extending their teaching artist training program to up to 30 of our students every year, which is also an additional skill set that our students can have in their back pocket as they're going out in the world and trying to make a living. So all of that to say, we are deeply engaged in the process of launching our students out into the world, particularly in the 3rd year. Not just giving them depth of coursework. Okay, moving on. What do I study? This is where I might actually ask the students to chime in a little bit, because I have a couple of slides here that show you give you some indication of what the courses are, and I won't go through each one in great detail because that would be boring, and that it would not really give you the whole picture. So we'll just kind of give you a snapshot, and if you have specific questions about any of the courses that you see here, you can certainly ask here or send us an email later. Year 1. The overview of this year that I would say is that year 1 is an interesting kind of interesting is really not a very good word. It's not a very clear word. I guess what I would say about year 1 is that you're plunged into the program pretty much in the fall as a cohort of dramaturgy students to dig into your existing skill set, to look at better defining what dramaturgy is going to mean to you, and to start to think about expanding your vocabulary about other disciplines. The first semester is not the semester in the program which involves the most collaboration with the other disciplines, because each discipline is sort of engaged in the same process. It's sort of a deep dive into discipline. As you can see here, in the fall, this fall in particular, our first year students are taking an Introduction to Dramaturgy class with me, which is an intensive seminar, which these guys have also had. A Fundamentals of Directing course, which is a directing course for students who are not in the directing concentration per se, taught by the amazing director Lee Silverman. A History and Theater course taught by Professor Arnold Aronson, who's a longstanding member of the faculty and a renowned scholar, particularly in the history of design. And then the beginning of a year-long course with Leslie Abazian, who is a playwright and actor who's on the faculty and teaches this course specifically for dramaturgy students to engage in the process of writing a play while they're over the course of a year, while they're also actually learning how to work with each other on dramaturgy of those plays. Do you guys want to actually jump in for a second and just talk a little bit about what the first year is kind of like?
Sure.
Just quickly, generally.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first year, in a way, is sort of means of breaking you down in order to build you up. It's you've got to. I mean, what I found so exciting about the first year was that it challenged me. Suddenly, I was having to do all of these things that I had actually no practice really in doing, directing and playwriting, and even just the way I think we were taught to be talking about plays and thinking about plays and writing about plays was all suddenly very new. And not only grounded in theory and sort of an academic foundation, but also like what's happening in New York and in the world right now. That felt like it was all really a part of the conversation. And actually, for me, I think the first year was sort of finding my voice within the landscape of American theater, which is so vast and so, evolving constantly. So, I don't know, I guess for me it was really about finding my voice and sort of finding out where I sit as a dramaturg, what my skills are, what that kind of means to me, what I value within the field. All of that was sort of like mining for those things is really what the first year was for us. And also bonding as a group. I think we spent most of our time together as a class. It's great.
Yeah, for me, I felt like a lot of these practice-based classes were a way for me to find dramaturgy through other forms of theater and help, I mean, as Ned and Christian said, to find dramaturgy for yourself. So whether that's through the lens of playwriting or critical writing or directing, how can I use this as a dramaturg in the room? Or how can I find what my specific interest is within dramaturgy and within the field of theater. Having a year-long playwriting class is a great way to not only bond with your fellow classmates, but with Leslie and sort of find your way through writing and through how to talk about writing with your class. I mean, we get to discuss 5 different plays in one day and respond to writers who at first you may not know very well, but by the end you create very close relationships with. So.
Yeah, I would also add to that because I think, as I was applying to dramaturgy programs, I think I had a really clear sense of what I wanted and who I was as a dramaturg and how I identified. And I think part of what was valuable about the first year was that the way it's structured forced me to challenge that presumed confidence that I had in that foundation. Not that it ever went away, but it served as a foundation for me to introduce myself to new ideas that I really wouldn't have otherwise had access to, particularly in the second semester in collaboration, which is an exciting class, which I'm sure we can talk more about at the end.
Yeah. So before I move into year 2, I do want to just sort of highlight in the second semester of year 1 is a collaboration course, which is taught by Anne Bogart, the head of our directing program, which is for almost all of the students in the program across disciplines. I think except for the theater management and producing students are not in that class. And it is built on sort of a module schedule where you are putting up in teams, putting up new plays every few weeks in front of the class and working on that material in front of the class, and then having class critique of those works in progress, which are usually run by the dramaturgy students. And that's been a core course in the program for quite a long time, and it's evolved significantly over time to enrich the role of the dramaturgy students in the class and give them a more active level of participation, which led us, actually, this very year, moving into year 2, to add a second semester of the collaboration course for this year for dramaturgy students, playwrights, and directors together, which is a course that's been co-taught by myself and Anne and David Henry Wong, who's the head of our playwriting program. And that's also an evolving course because we just launched it this fall, but it's been a very successful, in many ways, way to extend the relationships and deepen the relationships among the students in the class as they've moved forward into collaborations that they've really chosen on slightly longer new plays that are also then put up in a bare bones but full production over the course of the semester. So that course itself is generating 10 productions of new plays that our dramaturgy students are all working on very intensively. To pull back a little bit on the second year is therefore actually really defined, in my mind, by capitalizing on the collaborative relationships that have been sort of launched in the first year, allowing those to deepen, hoping that they will deepen even outside the curriculum, with the dramaturgy students also collaborating with directors on their projects that are built into their curriculum, like their Chekhov projects, which are all happening this semester. The dramaturgy students end up getting folded into a lot of production work that isn't necessarily tethered to their own courses. But as you can see, even just in the fall list, there's an even greater emphasis with collaboration, the development on collaboration through the collaboration course, the development process course that Barry Grove teaches, places the theater managers and producers and dramaturgs in a class together to imagine and co-create sort of hypothetical theater companies in a very detailed way. Morgan Janess, who teaches here both semesters as an adjunct, teaches a playwright dramaturg workshop in the fall semester, which places those two disciplines together in a real collaborative conversation around work in progress, etc. So where you also see is an opportunity to deepen the slightly more academic and critical element of the studies, the course of study as well, with John Diaz's Shakespeare course, which is a really detailed deep dive into dramaturging, but really pulling apart Shakespeare in a practical sense in the room. Maybe you guys can speak a little bit about what that is, since you're in the middle of it, because it's a pretty unique course that pulls the dramaturgs and the directors now together into a class.
Sure. Yeah. So John's Shakespeare class is sort of the thing that when I applied to Columbia, I did not realize was what I was looking for. But it's an extraordinary seminar in which we really just learned some basic tools on how to make Shakespeare resonant and accessible and timely, and yet stay true to sort of what it essentially is. So it's a really exciting mix of some really traditional academic study and an analysis of the history and legacy of Shakespeare's work, but it's also more broadly, I think, a class in how to approach classical drama as an exciting platform on which to make a contemporary adaptation and take a really strong point of view. And so we work with Shakespeare by writing about it, by studying it, by speaking it, performing. We just took an exciting field trip. John is the artistic director of a really great theater in New Jersey called Two River Theater. It's a professional regional theater. And he takes his students out there to see a production once a semester. It's just, I can't really say enough about that class. I would also add just really quickly that Morgan's class in the first semester has taken a bent towards adaptation now. So actually John's class, which is really at the macro level, sort of a classical dramaturgy class, is, I find, in close conversation with Morgan's class, which is really about adaptation and how do you look at short stories and history and older plays as models for making something new about our contemporary world. So
But interestingly enough, both of them have a long history with the public theater. John was the resident dramaturg there for many years, working on the Shakespeare in the Park, and Morgan was the dramaturg there when it was in the 70s and 80s with Joe Papp. So that's sort of an overview of the second year. I mean, the spring semester of the second year sort of continues on that path and also gives an opportunity for the students to begin to look forward to their third year and developing thesis ideas in the dramaturgy practicum class with me. And as they sort of dig in deeper with Morgan, and then begin even in my class looking at planning a theatrical season, which is a course that I've developed and which also changes every year, but really which is about looking at the not-for-profit world and what the larger programming concerns are within the culture right now, and also sort of looking at process and what are the various challenges, considerations, obstacles to pulling together an artistic program for an existing theater. So that's what we do in year two, in the broadest sense. Moving on, this is just some additional info on electives that we offer, et cetera, et cetera. You can click through that. Year three, which I guess we don't have a slide for here, is a little different than in many other MFA programs, and I'll just take a second to talk about that. Year three is not a full-time, you do not have to enroll in full-time study. In fact, you do not enroll in full-time study. It's a year that we refer to as the research arts year, which is just Columbia terminology. You also do not pay the full freight tuition that year, so it's actually a much less expensive proposition in the third year. That year is devoted towards completion of the professional internships, if you have not begun those yet, and particularly work on your independent thesis project, which is meant to be the deepest engagement that you have with an independent project, with an advisor involved as well, obviously. Over the course of that year, many of our students are also kind of beginning to enter the professional world, getting jobs, doing work outside the university, working also collaboratively on the director's thesis projects or the acting thesis projects, the playwriting thesis projects, alongside their own independent work. So in many, many cases, those students don't actually disappear or anything in the third year, but they're not engaged in full-time classes. They're in the process of being advised and working on their thesis project. Those thesis projects really vary. A frequent question we get when people come into interview is, what do people do for their thesis projects? There's a really wide range of options. I always want these thesis projects to be done with sort of one or two things in mind. Either a project or an inquiry, an academic inquiry, that you feel like having the umbrella of graduate student status at Columbia University will enable you to dig into a project or a research project that you won't be able to do once you're out of here. Or to really think about it in terms of a more practical tool in your own professional development. So to engage in an independent project that may lead you down a path towards a particular kind of professional engagement, whether that is working on an adaptation of something or a translation of something, or doing a critical analysis of an issue that exists in the not-for-profit world, for example, or the commercial sphere, doing a very practical kind of analytical paper on the state of the field, or a practical project, aligning yourself with collaborators to produce a production, to be the dramaturg on another production, whether it's with your cohorts, fellow students, or outside of the university. It might be a situation where you are apprenticed to an established artist over the course of a year on a particular project, on which you could write a process paper. The range of options and thesis topics has been all over the place. One of our third years right now is in Cambodia doing research for his project, which involves writing an original play about his own family history alongside a critical analysis of process. Another one of our students is writing and performing a solo performance, because she's also an actor, that she's developing alongside research on the history of the genre, which she'll use by way of sort of introducing and sort of critiquing her own work. Those are just two really, interesting examples just from this year's third year class. So there's a really wide range, and it's just something that we talk about as you get closer. I urge the students not to worry about it too much until they're really coming up towards the end of their second year and thinking about where their interests really lie, because it does take a while to kind of figure out who you are and what you want to do. But it should be something that is also going to sustain your interest over the course of an entire year. How does dramaturgy fit within the theater program? I want to let these guys talk a little bit more about that too, because I think they can speak to their own experience of it. But I can tell you, like, the study of dramaturgy and dramaturgy students are central to the ethos and production work of the program. It sometimes takes a while to overhaul stereotypes of what a dramaturg is supposed to do or not do. But we've made a lot of progress in that way amongst the faculty, certainly. And I think one of the challenges that dramaturgy students anywhere have is that they have an evolving sense of their own potential for contribution to a process, while the other students in the program are also learning how they might engage with dramaturgy students, and that is not always an easy process. But generally speaking, I've invited students into this program who are ready for that challenge, and over the course of time, what that has done is it's really kind of retrained generation of students to think differently about dramaturgs, and letting go of some of the slightly limiting stereotypes about them only being responsive or being sort of research hounds. So I think we have an increasingly healthy relationship with the dramaturgy students into the program, and I feel like they're deeply woven into it and generally really, really well respected. As I said, because collaboration is a core value, the program is always trying to move deeper into that idea. Oh yes, so there's two other things on here. Opportunities to develop a cohort among 6 different disciplines of instruction. That is not a small thing. Not all theater programs have the range of students that we have here. And one of the things that you get out of coming to graduate school is a cohort of colleagues, some of whom you will maybe never want to see again, and some of whom you really do and really are going to try to build work with out in the world, and who you'll take with you. There's a growing, very active alumni body of Columbia MFAs out in the profession, who are meeting lots of success in different disciplines, and it's one of the things that you get out of being here. And I think the way in which dramaturgy students intersect with all those disciplines is really then to their benefit. It's also true that there are certain advantages of being in a school of the arts in the same way versus a drama school only, and that although the intersection between the programs that are within the school is somewhat limited, there is cross-registration between the theater program and the writing program, and the theater program and the film program, and the theater program and the visual arts program. There are opportunities to take courses in those other areas, and potentially to build some connections with students who are working in other media. And that's been a real benefit, I think, and it's a growing opportunity for us. So, but maybe you guys can talk a little bit more about your own experience about where dramaturgy students fit.
Yeah, so something that's helped me in the past 2 years is really feeling the support from the professors in other concentrations. So Anne Bogart always welcomes us into her classrooms if we're working with a particular director. David Henry Wong has allowed some dramaturgs who are working with the playwrights. They're taking a rewriting course right now, so we're involved with that process through. He's let us come in and lead conversations with the class about the rewrites, and so it feels like there's a really great support system and like recognizing the many diverse ways in which we are dramaturgs, and how we serve and how we collaborate with other individuals within the program. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really beautiful and probably, and I would imagine really unique to the Columbia program, is that dramaturgs are really taken seriously. by faculty and students. And while the first year does sort of feel, you feel all of your insecurities all the time around finding your voice and identifying yourself and situating yourself in a collaborative process, the pattern I've noticed is that because I think this program looks for dramaturgs who are particularly driven and interdisciplinary and not just scholars, but artists and public speakers and collaborators and thinkers, that what I've noticed is there's a sort of there's a way in which I think the dramaturgs are often taken really seriously to facilitate conversations like Anna was mentioning, to run events, to organize events, to write plays of their own and stage them, to direct plays, to act in things, we're really, I do feel like a coveted resource here. And I think in many programs, dramaturgs are sort of looked at as a luxury, or people who are sort of within their own niche, closed off world. And I feel like our program, I think the way Columbia has structured its pedagogy around collaboration really positions dramaturgs in a leadership role right here, even before we get out into the world. So it feels like the leadership skills that we're practicing and talking about and theorizing about in class, we're constantly putting into practice.
Great. I'll leave that there. That's better than I could have said it. So just moving on quickly to New York itself. Obviously, for those of you who are in New York, you already know this stuff, but New York is obviously an international cultural capital, and there's a lot going on here. And the opportunity to see a range of work in different art forms is sort of unparalleled, at least in the US here. Whether or not our students want to stay here after they graduate, and certainly there is not a bias about trying to force everyone to stay in New York. I want people to work where they want to live. There are great advantages to being able to be exposed to the work that you can see here. As I said, we get free ticket offers almost all the time. One of our student employment opportunities is a job which coordinates student tickets and reaches out into the world to get ticket offers that would not automatically come to us. But we really get a wide range of options in that way. As I said, we can draw upon the very best faculty in their fields, and we also are able to bring innumerable artists in every discipline onto the campus all the time to talk to classes, to give talks, to be interviewed, to drop by for just a little while. The number of people that the students here are able to intersect with over the course of their 3 years is pretty unparalleled, I think. And of course, we are therefore able to really help plug students into professional opportunities that they might not be able to get otherwise. So one other thing that's happening, which is actually really exciting, is the development of the new Columbia campus, which is not going to replace the old Columbia campus on which we are sitting, but it is going to expand the university. It's an area which sort of begins at West 125th Street and Broadway. It stretches for several blocks towards up north and towards the river. And one of the two buildings, the first two buildings to be built on that new site, is the Lenfest Center for the Arts, which is going to be a state-of-the-art presentation venue for the School of the Arts. It's really the centerpiece of the campus, and it's going to represent an opportunity for us to have a prominent venue on the campus in the city that the theater program has never had. We've always produced in all kinds of different venues and have developed audiences that way for each production, but to have a really high-tech, well-appointed, flexible space in a building which is also going to be showcasing film and visual art in particular is going to be an amazing opportunity for us. So there's just to give you a little sense of what that's all about, there's a little video which I'm going to share, which is just a couple of minutes long, so hang in there. But this will just give you a little bit of a sense of what this is.
The official name of Columbia is Columbia University in the city of New York.
The relationship between the city and the university is completely intertwined.
So now we have this moment. Unless we had a new campus, we would gradually decline. And that was unacceptable. And so it had to be a big idea.
The new campus in Manhattanville, 6.8 million square feet, is the size of the original Morningside Heights campus.
Renzo Piano, who is one of the greatest architects of our time, I selected at the beginning to be our master planner, our architect.
You have to tell a different story from what you told 150 years ago. It's a story about our time.
Their big idea was to raise the campus up from the street so that you're going to have the kinds of stores, medical clinics, and theaters that you would have in any vibrant street.
The Jerome L. Green Science Center serves as both an intellectual and a spatial bridge between the medical school campus and the Morningside campus, which over the last century has given birth to Nobel Prize after Nobel Prize. Next to it, the Lenfest Center for the Arts is being built now.
Science and art come together very beautifully.
Columbia Business School will be in the heart of the first phase of the Manhattanville campus. Looking at the designs, I feel huge excitement.
The community benefits agreement that Columbia crafted in partnership with community-based organizations has the potential to be groundbreaking in terms of really empowering communities and creating opportunities.
Being an alum of a university means you're a member of a family, and seeing your family do well is very gratifying.
The end result is this miracle. Columbia University in the city of New York.
Okay. Well, welcome back. I hope that gave you a little bit of a taste. Obviously, that's a promotional video from the university, but it gives you some sense of what the campus is going to look like up there and how much of a priority it is for the university. It's drawing a lot more attention to the school generally through the press, but also the university itself, obviously, is really invested in the success of this building as a presentation venue. So that's really exciting. This next slide is just a list of some of our alumni from different years and some of the many different things that they're doing. I won't go through it name by name, but we definitely chose a range of alumni doing all kinds of different things just to highlight here from different years of the program. But I think it is definitely indicative of how successful our alumni are, how fortunate they've been in sort of forging careers in the field after they leave here. This is just a small sample, actually. We really have a very distinguished alumni body from the dramaturgy program, so I'm really proud of that. Following that, and you can scroll through these things later, these are just some quotations that we have from some of these alumni who have graduated from the program in terms of describing what the program did for them, meant to them, and how it's had an impact on their professional careers. So I'd urge you to come back and scroll through some of this stuff later on. I think this last one is actually a pretty good one. If you're sure about being unsure, then that may very well be a good thing when considering an MFA in dramaturgy. If you like to explore, wonder, try, and continuously learn, then this is the degree for you. This is a guy who graduated just a few years ago and who's working in a digital media company that he founded and has had a very successful career. So moving on, we can move on to any questions that you may have. Any of the three of us can answer questions for the next 10 minutes or so. So please type in your questions if you have any. Here's one. If we're selected for an interview, what's the process? Do we need to be physically present? Ideally, you would be physically present, but we also do interviews over Skype if it's not convenient for you to come into New York, or if it's too cost prohibitive.
He's in London.
Oh, okay, you're in London. Yes, that might be cost prohibitive. Yeah, we do Skype interviews all the time, and that's fine. The process goes that the applications are due early January. What's the date, Julie? January 5th. And it takes us a number of weeks to kind of go through all the applications and read them as a committee. And then we invite people to come for interviews, usually sometime in early February. And then we try to make decisions by mid-March. There's some lag time in terms of aligning our admissions choices with financial aid allocations and packages that we can offer. We try to offer all that stuff up front so that you're not sort of waiting around for financial aid information after the fact. But that's sort of the rough schedule. So, but yes, Skype interviews are fine. Any other questions? I'm seeing the picture is flashing green and red, but I'm hoping that means we're still there. No more questions. All right. Well, if any of you have any other questions, oh, there's one. I just gotta wait for people to type. There's two. Is it possible for students to take extra elective classes in addition to the prescribed slots for electives in the curriculum? Yes, you're required to do 60 credits over the course of the 2 years. And if you do more than that, you have to pay extra. So you want to be careful not to do too many, right? Is that right?
You can do 18, up to 18.
Up to 18 per semester without penalty. Yeah. Okay, so you can do up to 18 credits per semester without penalty. If you want to take on more elective slots than are allotted, you can try to do that. In rare cases, if there's a required course that you feel like you don't want to take for some reason, or already have that course under your belt from undergraduate or somewhere else, and you want to make a case to me about why you should substitute a particular elective course for a particular course, I will always entertain those requests. I will not always grant those requests, but those are, but that's also possible. One thing that is definitely true is that I want this curriculum in dramaturgy to be nimble enough to accommodate the various interests of the students who are in it. I intentionally bring an eclectic group of students into the program every year, and I want them to be able to find courses beyond the core curriculum which fill out areas of interest for themselves. So it's a conversation that we can have for sure. The next question was, what kind of background do you look for in prospective students? There is not one particular background that I look for in prospective students. Most of our students have some background of formal study in theater or practice in theater. It's rare for someone to come into dramaturgy with none of that. But beyond that, the qualities that I look for in students are kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. I look for good writers, people who are adept at communicating with each other and can articulate an idea. And students who are ready for a challenge insofar as that they are going to be stepping into a program where they're going to have to redefine themselves as artists and collaborators kind of constantly, and to people who are willing to embrace that challenge and step into new collaborative relationships assertively and not wait to be asked. But beyond that, I hope to have as diverse a student body as possible in terms of background and interests and aesthetic interests. We do not espouse a single aesthetic here, and I think that's one of the hallmarks of the program. I mean, maybe you guys can talk more about.
Yeah, I just want to say to Joshua's question about extra electives, one of the amazing things about being at Columbia is that the university opens itself up to you, and like I guess somewhat of a masochist, but I almost every semester have taken extra electives, either within the school, well, all within the School of the Arts, but you can take, like I've embraced the writing program, especially. The classes in film and visual art are certainly open to you. And that extends well beyond in the English department and the anthropology department. All of these things are available to you so long as you can make it work in your schedule. And actually to anybody who comes here, I really encourage them to do that because I found that it's totally informed my time here. Has been taking classes outside of that. Yeah, I just wanted to go that.
Yeah. Same on that note, something I've done because I don't like to take more than 5 classes. My brain can't do that. I've audited classes in the past, specifically classes taught in another language, so I can practice without in a non-pressured environment, practice a second language. So yeah.
That's actually a really interesting point. We do have a foreign language requirement in the program. You have to demonstrate, in order to graduate, you have to demonstrate proficiency at sort of an intermediate level or better in a language, which you can have accomplished in undergraduate, or if you are already bilingual, you can kind of write off that requirement. But I do encourage the students, if they have a particular interest in a foreign language and particularly robust background in a foreign language, to find opportunities to do work in that language, or consider working on a translation or something to expand their ability to work in a foreign language. To me, it's part of a holistic approach to being a theater artist, particularly in the world that we live in. The curriculum itself doesn't require depth of study in a foreign language or work or generative work in a foreign language, but I want the students to be able to do it. And so that's why we have the foreign language requirement. But that's also something that, you know, each individual student kind of can talk to us about how they meet that requirement. And many students have already met it by the time they enroll, so it's not usually a daunting prospect. Any other questions before we move on? Give you a couple of seconds to type. Is there anything else that you guys feel like you should chime in with that I've overlooked?
Trying to anticipate people's questions.
Maybe impossible.
Yes. Oh, you know what? There was one thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about New York and what the advantages of studying New York are.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I feel like we didn't really quite emphasize is that the benefits of being in New York and having free tickets to everything is one benefit. The benefits of having an all-star faculty is another benefit. But when you get to go see your all-star faculty's work out in the world and in New York, and then be in class with them as they're developing it, that's a really unique benefit to the program. I think that, you know, one thing that I've been really grateful for is having had the opportunity to go to some of the most exciting, you know, well-funded theaters in New York and see my professors work, and then get a chance to engage with them and say, I didn't really understand this about your production, or this really, you know, this is really exciting. Can we talk more in depth than that? That feels like just a dimension of the pedagogy here that can't really be articulated in like a formal way or on paper, but it's something that's very alive in the program, is this spirit of sort of studying the landscape and sort of, you know, being able to just have access to all sorts of voices in different stages of the process.
Yeah, I will say the faculty are pretty good about, I mean, in all disciplines, about sort of opening their work to the students and inviting them to it, but also being willing to engage in real conversation about it. It's not sort of like, well, we're the all-stars, they're over here, and you can come, but we don't want to talk about it with you. It's not like that at all. Actually, people are quite open and welcoming about having real conversation with the students as future colleagues, not just, you know, reinforcing a hierarchy around teacher-student at all. Right. Because that's how we see the students, I think, mostly, is our future colleagues. That's what we're trying to create. So I'll leave that there. Anything else? It doesn't sound like there are any other questions right now. So, and we're right at time. So please feel free to contact us or the admissions office with any further questions that you have. I hope you'll all be applying to the program, and thanks for sticking with us. Have a good one.